I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, that's a Tesla Model Y Performance, and what you're going to watch today is an independent review of the 2023 Model Y Performance that's just landed right here in Australia. Our Model Ys come from China, that's also the case for this Performance, and on the channel you can find my review from last year of the rear-wheel drive version of this car. Tesla has now filled out the Australian Model Y range with the dual motor Performance. We still don't have the long range dual motor variant here, which I think would be a real sweet spot, but what this vehicle behind me delivers is a sporty SUV that undercuts the pricing of something like an Audi SQ5 or BMW X3 M40i, but delivers absolutely blistering levels of performance, zero tailpipe emissions, and the convenience of being able to charge at home if that's a facility that you have. But what is the Model Y Performance really like as a car to live with? We all know that EVs are quick in a straight line, Tesla performance models especially so. But how's this vehicle's ride quality? What's the interior really like to live with? And what are its ongoing running costs? In today's video, I'm going to give you the answer to all of those questions in my independent Model Y Performance review. Now, Chasing Cars, the channel, is owned by Budget Direct, one of the big insurance companies here in Australia. We don't accept advertising from car manufacturers. We're neither for or against any brand in the market. What we're for is great cars. So let's find out if this is one of those. Before we get started, hit subscribe below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Jumping into any Tesla is a real experience, and even though this interior design concept has been around for some time now, anyone that hasn't spent time in a Tesla jumps into this car and is immediately wowed by the minimalism of the interior design and then by how well most of the technology works in this car. It's clear that Tesla didn't let themselves get held back by existing automotive technology concepts. Instead, they've approached this car more like software designers for a tablet or for a phone, and as such, the screen here in the center, a 15-inch touchscreen, works really well and really intuitive for most things that people want to do in the car. However, it will be an acquired taste in that there is no instrumentation in front of the driver, neither by way of a small extra screen for the driver, which you do get in the Tesla Model S and Model X overseas, and you don't get a heads-up display either, like many cars at this price point provide you with. So to know your speed, you have to look just here, the top right corner of this screen. You do get used to it. I don't think it's as intuitive or natural as looking forward. I've now spent many miles in Tesla Model 3s and Model Ys, so I'm not new to these cars, and I still prefer my private car, for instance, which has a speedometer in front of me. I know a lot of people solve this with aftermarket products, but it wouldn't surprise me if a future update to this car included the Model S's thin screen, and personally, I hope it does. Now, the absence of many other physical controls is also a bit of a learning curve, but it's a learning curve people get over quickly because Tesla has designed the hardware there is intelligently. On the steering wheel, we've got a control here for volume and audio, and over here, controls for the autopilot, adaptive cruise, and lane keep systems, and they work well. They've got a dual purpose to move your steering wheel, move the mirrors once you get into position, and then everything is linked to your driver profile, which is linked to your phone, which is how you access the car, as well as the redundant key card here as a bit of a backup. Now, virtually everything else, manual controls for stuff like the headlights, wipers, and that sort of thing, you have to control through the touchscreen here. However, viewers rightly pointed out on my review of the Model Y rear drive that you can accomplish many of those tasks with the voice command system, and many of those tasks do work with voice commands. However, yesterday I wanted to change the bass and treble levels for audio, for instance, and for instance, you might say, open audio settings. Instead, we just get a generic settings panel. That's not where they are. Open treble settings. And it doesn't do anything. Instead, to alter that stuff, you need to start playing a song, click on the player here, then the equalizer, and you can do it through the screen. Now, that's fine. It's just that the voice command isn't yet a cure-all for everything. As for the rest of the interior, we've got vinyl seats. This car, they're in the black, which is paired with really nice wood trim. Some people don't like this. I think it adds warmth to the cabin. The seats are electrically adjustable and heated. They're not cooled though, which is a problem in summer, especially with the black interior. Vinyl soaks up heat, it doesn't breathe well, and your back gets pretty sweaty, as I found out over 1,000 Ks in the saddle of a Model 3 with the black interior in summertime in Australia. Now, the white interior is a good option. It's going to not soak up anywhere near as much heat. It's going to reflect heat and light. Of course, you're going to have to clean it more often. What could Tesla do? They could offer a fabric seat option that was always in the plan for the Model 3 and Model Y, but it hasn't happened. Or they could do perforation with active cooling, and that would solve the issue. So hopefully they do that. You've got storage space down here, huge bin. This car doesn't have a gearbox, of course. Twin phone chargers, flockline door bins, and generally material quality and build quality in here is honestly really excellent. Tesla are coming a long way in that regard. Not to mention that this screen is capable of running rich apps. Netflix, Disney Plus, a whole bunch of games, so you've actually got something to do while you charge this car. Why aren't other EV makers engaging to that same level with the interior tech? Hopping into the back of the Model Y Performance now, you find a second row that's really spacious for an SUV of this size. The Model Y is 4,750 mils long, but it has legroom more akin to a large SUV if it had a combustion engine, and that's because the wheelbase is especially long on this vehicle. Now you can see for myself at 6 foot, behind my own driving position, legroom's good, tow room is unlimited, headroom below the glass roof is also absolutely fine. However, as I mentioned up front, this car comes standard and can only be fitted with this fixed glass panel. It's a big thing about a Tesla, and it does give the interior so much light and it looks awesome. But just here in the back right now especially, there's a lot of radiant heat just kind of sitting in the air, and it's especially like the glass is hot to the touch, and just floating above it there is just this pool of hot air. Now, of course, crank the air conditioning system, you'll deal with most of that, but the top of your head can get quite hot here in Australia with a Tesla with a glass roof. Some other EVs have a sunshade or the option to just not have a sunroof, and I think a lot of buyers might prefer that. So before you go for one of these cars, try and test drive it on a hotter day and see whether you're okay with the level of heat that comes through the glass roof. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, it just might not be to your tastes. In terms of other amenities though, we've got soft doors, Alcantara inserts, big door bins as well, map pockets in the seats, air vents, USB-C chargers. We've got a flip down armrest here with some cup holders. This is a 5th seat as well, and a fully flat floor, which just makes this car incredibly easy to live with. What we don't have though is like a cargo divider between the boot and the back seats. That's something you might want to consider trying to install aftermarket, especially if you're going to carry taller objects there. You don't want them coming through to the cabin. Now, when it comes to visually telling the Model Y Performance apart from the rear drive, it's an easy one to pick. You get these standard 21-inch dark matte Uber turbine wheels that look pretty damn cool in my opinion. It's on sport suspension, so it's sitting a lot lower, only 154 mils of ground clearance. Difficult to even call this an SUV in my opinion, but the shape of the vehicle certainly implies that's what it is. You'll also notice the red brake calipers, bigger brakes on the front, and you've also got this carbon lip spoiler as well. Now, the Model Y is the mid-size SUV of Tesla's lineup, but it's kind of paired with the Model 3 sedan in the range. And what we do get here on the back, as well as our dual motor logo with a red underline indicating performance trim, is a power tailgate. Now, one button gets out of the way quickly and silently, and it opens to reveal a good flexible boot. This car's got really good packaging. 854 litres of space back here is the claim. It looks a little smaller than that to my eye because I think they might be measuring up to sort of here. Usually boots are only measured to the window line, but the window line's hard to gauge because of the shape of this car. But you do get a big bucket of space underneath the boot floor as well, which would be adding to that figure. Now, in the back of this car, Tesla has placed in this little zip case a granny charger, so the ability to charge this car off a household power point. That's an accessory now, you don't get that standard. What you do get is holes off to the left and right of the boot. You get the ability to flip down the rear seats remotely, which is a great feature. However, you're not getting tie down points here at the front of the boot. They're only really on the back as the top tether points for the seats. And in preparation for this video, I put a call for questions out on the Chasing Cars channel, so subscribe to participate in that sort of thing in future. Somebody asked, can you carry a spare wheel and tire in this car? Well, technically yes, you will be able to get one into the boot. Lashing it down is going to be the issue because we don't have tie down points. So if you really wanted to carry a full-size spare with this car because you do a lot of country touring, fair enough, you're probably going to need to put it on the roof. Now, if you get Tesla's Model Y roof racks, they've got a dynamic load limit of 74 kilos. That's plenty for a spare wheel and tire. So as I say, that one's probably going above the car. But the huge boot at the back isn't where the practicality stops for the Model Y, because once you open up the front bonnet, you get access to the Froot or the Frunk, with 117 litres of extra space for additional bags or other stuff, charging cables, whatever you might want to carry around. Now this is a little bit more sort of hardy, it's not carpeted, but it is weatherproof, so your stuff is going to stay dry underneath this bonnet. You've also got your tow hook in there, and I think this really illustrates how far ahead Tesla is of most of its rivals in the EV space in terms of packaging, because this is a powerful vehicle with powerful twin electric motors, and yet the car is still packaged to offer so much practicality. It really goes to how miniature those motors really are on the Model Y compared to a number of rivals. Ongoing running costs are an important consideration for any family vehicle, and largely any EV is going to deliver you cheaper running costs over time than an equivalent combustion vehicle, and that's how it is for this Model Y. But also Tesla's pretty good at making its EVs energy efficient, and this car will cost you less per kilometre than many of its BEV rivals as well. So let's start there on efficiency. The Model Y Performance uses a 75 kilowatt hour usable lithium ion battery with liquid cooling, and Tesla claims a 514 kilometer WLTP rated range. Well, we've done our full highway range test and recharging test on the Tesla Model Y Performance, and the highlight was that out on the highway here in Australia, you can expect consumption of 17.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And that translates to a real-world highway range of 436 kilometers between top-ups. But in town, driven relatively gently, I was able to get 15 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks out of this car, which is a range of 500 kilometers. And that's where this vehicle is properly useful for family duties. You can drive it the whole week and the weekend, and you probably wouldn't have to recharge for more than about once a week. Of course, many people will recharge at home, where energy is cheapest overnight, and you could recharge the whole battery on this vehicle for as little as $15 or even less, depending on your tariff at home. Public charging could set you back as much as $60 at current Tesla supercharger pricing, because you do pay for convenience. Now, it isn't quite accurate to say that Teslas don't need to be serviced, as I sometimes read around the traps. All cars do need servicing because they all have hardware, suspension, steering components that will need maintenance over time, not to mention consumables like these expensive Pirelli tires. What you can say though is that the Tesla doesn't have to be serviced according to a rigid routine like every 12 months. Instead, it's a condition-based system for this car. Now, when it comes to insurance, in the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer spent $1,289 to comprehensively insure a new Tesla Model Y. Everybody's situation varies, and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, your driving history, and how you garage the car. And finally, on warranty, this is one area where Tesla comes up a bit short compared to most rivals, because the vehicle warranty is just 4 years with 80,000 Ks. We're used to 5 or 7 years with unlimited Ks for many manufacturers here in Australia. However, the high voltage components have their own warranty, 8 years, 192,000 kilometers for the Performance, a little bit better than the rear wheel drive model, which has 160,000 Ks. And that warranty means the degradation in the battery will be limited to 70% of its original capacity in that time. All right, so let's take the Model Y Performance out for a drive. Immediately taking off, even at just 50% throttle, it's pretty staggering how accelerative this car is. It isn't just quick, and it is really, really quick when you measure the performance. It's the way that it delivers power. It's got smoothness and linearity that a combustion engine could never dream of. Better refinement through the powertrain than a V12. You know, that's kind of the promise of an EV like this, that it just has this silken performance, great acceleration, amazing abilities to get you from 0 to whatever speed you want to do. But that's become a bit of a common party trick, and it's common to not just the Model Y Performance, but also a bunch of other BEVs in this price range. Vehicles like the Genesis GV60 Performance, which is a bit of an interesting rival to this car, but also more expensive vehicles like the BMW iX M60. Lots of different manufacturers are now employing technologies that in many cases were first seen on Teslas to make their EVs seriously fast, and not just from 0 to 100, but also beyond. And many of those technologies are standard on this car, and that starts with dual electric motors. This is the first dual motor Model Y for Australia. Until this point, there's only been the rear wheel drive model, which has about 220 kilowatts of power. This is a significant upgrade. The Performance has 413 kilowatts of power and 660 Newton meters of torque. So it's right up there in the BEV field in terms of its performance on paper. Now, like many other electric cars, it's not exactly light. It's just over 2,000 kilos in terms of tare mass as a Performance, a bit heavier than the single motor rear wheel drive. But among EVs, the Model Y is still one of the lighter cars. So for instance, if you go for a Porsche Taycan, which is a lot more expensive, it's hundreds of kilos heavier than this vehicle. And I'll come back to the way the weight has pros and cons in a minute. One of the major differences in the Performance is the tuning of the electric motors is also there to deliver really electrifying, pardon the pun, performance, alacritous performance. You've got a different set of drive modes. The car defaults to sport mode, but then you've also got track mode. Now, when it comes to acceleration, Tesla claims the Model Y Performance can do the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in 3.7 seconds, but we weren't able to equal that in independent testing. The best I was able to do was 3.96 seconds, the reason being that launch control was not enabled on this test vehicle. So let me know down below in the comments if you've bought one of these cars and you've hooked up a V-Box or other timing equipment and you've let rip to see its true 0 to 100 time. What I can tell you though is how well the Performance brakes on this car deliver. Now, the Model Y Performance gets a brake upgrade over the standard car, as you'd hope with all of that extra power. The front brakes are actually built by Brembo, even though they're badged as Tesla. The rear brakes used to be Brembo's, but Tesla made a change last year to just make them effectively the same rear brake as a Model Y long-range all-wheel drive, which is a variant that we don't get here. Now, the brakes are not the biggest out there in the industry. They're about 355mm discs on the front, a little bit smaller on the back, but their stopping power is incredible. We've measured the braking performance of the Model Y Performance, and it is the best braking SUV we have ever tested, delivering stops from 100 to 0 in under 33 meters. That is Porsche 911 territory, way shorter than many of this car's rivals, and that is something to be congratulated. Also worth noting, the Genesis GV60 Performance also has excellent braking capabilities. So that's all the stuff the Model Y Performance gets really right. What about the things where it's not perfect? And the upgraded suspension that this car has is one of those imperfect things. Now, the suspension and the ride quality is definitely better than what Tesla was able to achieve with the Model Y rear-wheel drive, which has atrocious urban ride quality. In my opinion, it isn't acceptable, and that's why Tesla has rushed through a suspension upgrade for the Model Y. Now, the rear-wheel drive still doesn't have the suspension upgrade in Australia, but it will be arriving soon, we think. However, all Model Y Performance delivered in this market have the upgraded suspension. The main upgrade is that it settles jiggle in the body, so your head isn't being tossed left to right anywhere near as much as in the rear-wheel drive, and it also has better quality damping when the car does hit a bump. However, the underlying firmness of the suspension is absolutely still there, and unfortunately the Model Y's ride can still best be described as really fidgety. So you're looking at a smooth piece of road and the Model Y's finding imperfections and fidgeting. Thankfully, this problem actually goes away on the highway. So the highway ride quality, the high speed ride of the car is pretty good. Definitely acceptable, but at urban speeds you'll find that it's overly stiff compared to some rivals, and it doesn't need to be this stiff to manage its weight. The Audi SQ5 is actually heavier and rides better, particularly on that car's optional air suspension. With the Model Y, there is no optional air suspension, and the dampers are actually not active. It's a passive damper, so you're always getting this mode. You can't slacken it off. Then there's the handling, which is highly competent, but not engaging in the way that some drivers will look for. Now, here in the driving position where you've got a great view out, good hit point, you feel as though you're sat right over the front axle. It's quite an unusual feeling for a sports SUV. The turn-in feels absolutely immediate and zealous, which is great. This car really wants to change direction, and it's equipped with grippy Pirelli P0 electric vehicle tires. That's all good. What you can't really do though is engage with the chassis on the same level as some competing combustion EVs or EVs like the Taycan, which just strike a really superior ride and handling balance. Obviously, they're way more expensive than this car, so we can't ping the Tesla Model Y for not feeling like a Porsche Taycan, and I'm not about to do that. But one thing I would love to see Tesla develop in future is chassis handling and balance that's a little more communicative with the driver, senses what the driver is trying to do, and allows a little bit more movement in the vehicle through corners. At the moment, it feels very sticky, like Audi Quattro vehicles were 20, 25 years ago. Is clinical a fair word? It could be. It's incredibly competent, it's incredibly secure on the road. That's what a lot of people are looking for. But I think a little bit more movement and a slightly more relaxed stability control system would make the Model Y even more fun to drive on a country road. However, on track, you can put it into track mode, you can put it into drift mode, you can do crazy stuff, but of course, then you're really relaxing all of those systems right off rather than just using the natural balance and calibration of the chassis. So there's a little more room for improvement, but I think for most people, they would agree the Model Y Performance is a pleasant car to drive, incredibly quick, great brakes. For many, the ride quality will be livable. For me, it would be. Just make sure you test drive it to find out. Onto refinement, it's a pretty quiet car, the noise levels are decent, you can tell there's some insulation in the glass and you can really enjoy that stereo. However, bumps resonate quite badly through the cabin from the rear suspension actually. It feels like there's not enough carpeting back there to quieten down the Model Y when it goes through bumps. That's something Tesla could certainly improve. And on the safety front, it really depends on which safety package you go for in this car. This vehicle, like all Tesla media cars, is not equipped with enhanced autopilot or full self-driving capability. So we can't talk about things like navigate on autopilot. We can't talk about smart summon because Tesla will not fit those things to its media cars. So instead, this vehicle has adaptive cruise control, very smooth, basic lane centering, which works okay. But if you change lanes, you have to turn the lane centering function back on, which is something that isn't the case in most rivals. Now, of course, the answer is option up enhanced autopilot, but if I can't test it, I can't really tell you how I feel about its tuning. So what's my final verdict on the 2023 Tesla Model Y Performance? Well, Tesla ought to be congratulated for designing one of the most fit for purpose and well integrated electric cars on the market. The Model Y has phenomenal packaging, no matter if you go for the rear drive or the performance, but this car offers astonishing levels of acceleration, superb braking, the best braking we've tested on any SUV, and generally decent handling and easy livability when it comes to public charging on this country's most reliable charging network, the Tesla Supercharger. However, like everything in life and all cars, this one isn't perfect. The suspension is still not quite disciplined enough to match the best sports SUVs out there, like the Audi SQ5 or BMW's X3 M40i. It comes down to the damping. This car is still too fidgety on smooth roads and offers up way too much firmness and jitter into the cabin over bumps. However, it is an improvement over the 2022 Model Y suspension. You can just tell there's a little bit less head jiggle, lateral sway, but there is more work to do on the suspension of this car. Likewise, I can't tell you my feelings about enhanced autopilot because Tesla doesn't fit it to media vehicles, nor is Australia a market that has yet received full self-driving capability. So I can't tell you about that stuff, but as a vehicle, as a family car to live with, this is one of the best EVs out there. Very keen to know your views, so let me know down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.